Hello, Keelan. Hello,
Hello, Leo.
everybody, and welcome to the Misano review. First of all, I have to apologize. I'm tired as fuck. I slept 4 hours, and it's a pretty wild story. Like my life usually is pretty boring, so I don't go out partying too much anymore, and I stay at home with the missus and the animals. So everything's quite easygoing. But yeah, the last 24 hours my for my typical way of living my life have been quite wild. So we had a fight night at the gym I'm training at. So we went there and watched some kids fight. It was hilarious. They did the point fighting, and it's quite a nice way for children to fight, but
Mhm.
still very hilarious if they're like 7 year olds fighting each other. So I had a blast. It was fun, but it was super hot. Then we went to a birthday party and we got home at like 4:30. So it was long. And then the UFC was live. So I couldn't miss that. And my boy Sean Strickland, my fellow skinhead, he did the impossible. I mean, this is a MotoGP podcast, but I think we have to talk about it because
Yeah,
Sean Strickland is a biker. He's one of us. And
he is one of us.
he once reposted a story of mine or like a reel of mine, which was very, very cool. And yeah, I love him. He's so hilarious. So yeah, this motherfucker goes out and outboxes the best kickboxer the UFC probably has ever seen. I mean, it's just so wild how he's screaming at him. And like the first one to ever drop Adesanya, how incredible. But like
Oh,
how he's screaming at him at the end of the fifth, oh, let's fucking go, China man. Absolutely hilarious. And yeah, I'm very happy for him. And we might actually live in a world where Sugar Sean O'Malley, Sean Strickland, and Colby Covington are UFC champs simultaneously. So yeah, ESPN might as well cut the deal with the UFC. did you see? Did you see that they stopped the press conference with
yeah,
Sean for too many swear words?
yeah. Sean's the fucking goat. Honest to God, that is about the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Honestly, Sean Strickland was my second favorite thing of the fight night because Manuel Carp at
Manal
the end of
Cape, yeah.
yeah, Cape, whatever, however you pronounce his name, he's Portuguese, so I don't know. Yeah, but this tiny motherfucker starts beef with Israel Adesanya, who is like twice the size at the press conference, insults him, then wins the fight. I mean, it was a close fight, it was a good fight, and Dos Santos kid, he really impressed me. But then he goes out, insults Kai Kara France, and says basically, yeah, if you pull out again, I will go to your gym and kick your ass. And nobody will do something because they're all a bunch of faggots. And then DC with the microphone who just walks away like, nope, not anymore. And honestly, I miss Joe Rogan so much because I feel like Joe Rogan would have
Yeah.
kept the microphone in his face and let him talk, let him rage. So yeah, it was hilarious. And like also I'm very happy for Sean because like Inzi is so good, but he's so fucking cringe. I mean, come on. Dude paints his fingernails.
Oh my God. I
Yeah.
swear to God, somewhere along the line in life, we went down an alternate timeline where only this could happen, where
Yeah.
Sean O'Malley, Sean Strickland, and potentially Colby Covington could all be UFC champions. I mean, I think we have to try and get Sean Strickland on the podcast. I think this is the ultimate crossover because, like you said, Sean Strickland's a biker. You know, he's a Harley rider. Okay, fair enough, but it's still a bike. You know, he is still one of us. And I think if we can get the UFC middleweight champion on the Bad MotoGP podcast, the content is just it'll I'll retire from podcasting because we need to see Sean Strickland on here. We've got the two skinheads, we've got the bike connection. I mean, it writes itself. It really, really does. And then Manel Cape going off in his homophobic slur against city kickboxing. Against the dude that's 60 pounds bigger than him.
I mean, it was fucking hilarious, and it
Oh,
was
so
like
funny.
7 a.m. in the morning. I went to bed, slept for like 4 hours, woke up for Moto 3. And yeah, then watched Moto 2, watched MotoGP. Then I watched World Superbike. So my brain is fried, but yeah, I mean, and the European Championships from dressage European Championships are at the moment. So my girlfriend watched this, and I watched it simultaneously with her. Yeah, it was a wild ride today, literally. But we're here to talk about MotoGP. And I mean, how fucking heroic are Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco Bagnaia? I
Wow.
mean, Pecco couldn't even get off the bike by himself. I remember last week we were talking about him potentially missing, but we didn't know if there were any broken bones or whatsoever. They still had to clear this, and he was declared fit. But by no means I would have guessed that he finished on the podium twice, and the way he fought off Danny Pedrosa was good, but the battles with Marco Bezzecchi and this kind of of a battle with Jorge Martin at the beginning of the race, dude, whatever those painkillers are, I want some, because those pills are fucking magic. I mean, incredible. I can't even, to quote Jack Dixon, I can't even put it into words. How incredible this performance is. And I mean, yes, Jorge Martin was better than everybody, faster than everybody. His qualifying pace was electric. Yeah, okay, cool. I mean, yes, he had to deal with two injured cripples on a on a Ducati.
Two
So yeah,
disabled
I
Ducati
mean,
riders.
he was supposed to win, and I mean that's with the most respect I could possibly give Jorge Marti, because he was flawless this weekend. But like the real heroes were for me Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco, because it was incredible what they did and how much better they were than everybody else who are like on the same bike. Like for example, where the fuck was Jean Zarco or Luca Marini? Like
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
I still can't find them. But I mean, Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco Bagnaia. I mean, that is just those are just the hearts of champions right there. And it's like I always say to people, MotoGP riders are built differently, and for this very reason. I mean, I don't. I suppose we can kind of joke about it now because Pecco's all right. But I thought Pecco was going to end up like Joe Swanson from Family Guy, like a half empty toothpaste. But thankfully he's okay, and thankfully he didn't break his fucking legs or anything like that. And not only does he not break his legs, he goes to one of the toughest tracks in Europe in Misano, and he gets two podiums out of it. I mean, that's just unbelievable form from Pecco. You know, nothing but the utmost of respect to him, and he showed exactly why he's a world champion. That kind of commitment to the point where you can't even get off your own bike by yourself. That says it more than anything. And Marco Bezzecchi with a completely ruined left hand to go out and get two podiums as well is just heroic. It really is. I mean, I'm left-handed, right? And I can't imagine what I would do if my hand was in that condition. So for Marco Bezzecchi to be able to go out onto a MotoGP bike and get two podiums out of Misano is just words don't even do it justice. It's just unbelievable. It is genuinely heroic how tough both of those guys have been, and they deserve all the credit that they're getting, and rightfully so, because that was just outrageous.
Yeah. But to go back to Jorge Martin, I remember us talking about him last week. Like, this
Mm.
is his opportunity to close in the championship. And even if Pecco is racing, like he did,
Mm-hmm.
he still has to make sure that he cuts into that deficit until Pecco is at 100%. Because I'm quite sure if Pecco was at 100%, he would have smoked him. He
Yeah,
would have
I'm
smoked
inclined to
him.
agree.
Yeah. So props to Jorge Martin. It's not his fault Pecco crashed. It's not his fault that Marco Bezzecchi crashed, and he's doing everything right. I mean, it's the second double of the season. So if he can get the consistency rolling, and especially like with India upcoming, I'm not quite sure if this is true, but I might have read that they are doing the homologation on Thursday before the race,
Mm-hmm.
and the riders are apparently super angry because there were some walls who, or are some walls in India who are very, very misplaced in a way for motorcycle racing.
Ugh.
And there are rumors that there was like this secret meeting where riders met in Montmelo, and yeah, they were discussing what they do and if the safety standards don't live up. So it's gonna be a wild ride. Again, like always, I don't remember if we're going to India next week or we have a 2 week break. I don't fucking know, but yeah, it's gonna be wild. Like this India track is a complete wildcard. Nobody has ever been there. Nobody has ever. I mean, like the best thing you can do is play it on the PlayStation, but it's a complete wildcard, and it could shake things up. You know.
Yeah,
And yeah, if Jorge Martin can continue this trajectory and make up points on Pecco, as long as Pecco is like not at 100%, then we might actually see a championship battle.
very possibly. Very possibly. I mean, Jorge Martin has been absolutely outstanding this whole weekend. I mean, on Saturday in qualifying, Maverick Vinales sets a lap record for two wheels around Misano. I think it was a 130.8. And then Jorge Martin comes along and just blows it out of the water by half a second. I mean, that's just outrageously good form from Jorge Martin. He might actually have the best one lap pace out of any rider in MotoGP. I mean, the kid's talent is just so high, but it's always been his consistency that's been the big issue. But what we saw this weekend was complete and utter consistent domination from Jorge Martin. And I think we both said this at the beginning of the season. For Jorge Martin, it's just about consistency and doing it week after week. His talent and certainly his speed have never been the issue. He's one of the fastest riders on an already very fast grid. It's just putting all the pieces together and putting them together week after week after week. Now, I don't know what Paco Banya's health status is. I can't imagine it's very good because he's in severe pain from having to ride around Misano. But like you said, what Jorge Martin has to do for the next at least 2-3 weeks is take advantage to as great a degree as possible of Paco Banya's decreased health. And as long as he can keep getting wins and high results, then we could well have a championship battle. But I mean, really, for the next few weeks, it's in Jorge Martin's hands how close he makes this. He could drive this pretty damn close, but it's on him at the end of the day. But credit to him, brilliant weekend. Never looked close to anybody else touching him, really.
The thing is, Pecco is now still in shape. Like everybody who ever worked out in their life, you know, like 1 week break doesn't completely get you out of shape. But if he's not able to train for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks because of his leg, then it could be, let's say, more damaging to his championship charge than this race in Misano because he was still like at like from his fitness perspective at close to 100%. Yes, he has the leg injury, but like his overall fitness. But if he can't train for like a month, it's gonna be difficult. So I'm very excited to see how it plays out. And you mentioned something very interesting, like a already very fast grid. And with Dani Pedrosa, absolute legend, what he did on the grid, it got me thinking. Like, yes, we have a very good grid, like from top to bottom, but is Dani Pedrosa just one of the best riders we've ever seen, like born in the wrong era? Like, would he smoke everybody on this grid now if he was 10 years younger? Or is the new KTM just as good as a Ducati? Or even better?
I think that's a really interesting question, actually, and I'd love to hear everybody's responses to this as well. Let us know what you think about this. But I always have maintained that Danny Pedrosa is the greatest rider to never win a world title in the Premier class. I don't think I'll find much opposition to that. And I think, to be completely honest, with Danny Pedrosa's ability, I think he would beat 90% of the current riders in this paddock if he was in his physical peak in 2023 as opposed to 2010, 2011. I think that's how good of a rider Danny Pedrosa is and how good he's always been. And you make a great point about the KTM, and is it only because the KTM is as good as other bikes? but he's the reason the bike's as good as other bikes. You know, it's not like somebody else has come along, made this bike great, and Danny Pedrosa's reaping the rewards. Danny Pedrosa's helped make this bike the beast that it is. So that, if anything, lends more credit to the Danny Pedrosa argument about how good he is rather than taking anything away. Not only can he race and beat most of the grid, but he's developed the bike that's beating most of the grid too. So in my opinion, I think you made a very good point about Danny Pedrosa being sort of born in the wrong era, because I think if you had peaked Danny Pedrosa now, you'd see him challenging for podiums every single weekend. I just think he's that good of a rider, and he's got such a high rider IQ that I think a lot of riders would struggle to deal with him. I think he's a nightmare of a challenge on the track.
Yeah, and I could think we all agree that if we put Casey Stoner on the Ducati, he would be
Oh,
better than Pecco,
yeah.
I would say. If we put, I mean, if Danny Pedrosa was riding for Honda, he still wouldn't get any podiums, but like, let's pretend he would ride for KTM. Then, yes, I could see him definitely be better than Brad Binder.
Yeah, no
If
question.
like Valentino Rossi on a competitive Yamaha. Like the thing with the Yamaha and Honda, the comparison lacks a little bit because the bikes are garbage now. But
Hmm.
if you put Vale on a Ducati now, like peak Vale, nobody could touch him. Marcus, I mean, we saw he was like out of the alien era, he was the most successful, where
Hmm.
everybody raced simultaneously. Like, sadly, we never saw Marcus versus Stoner. That would have been awesome.
Oh.
But and Jorge Lorenzo, I mean, if Jorge Lorenzo stayed with Ducati, I mean, he could have had some very, very successful seasons over the pandemic. And if he never injured himself the way he did on the Honda, and yeah, Danny Pedrosa was just like born in the wrong era, I believe, because right now I think he's completely out of racing shape, not riding shape, racing shape.
Hmm.
And for him, there's no value in just biting down on the mouthpiece and just go because the risk is too high and the rewards are too little. Like if he's P4 or P3, that's not necessarily a big difference for him.
Hmm.
But it would have been nice, of course, but like his overall legacy wouldn't rise due to the P3 in the sprint, for example, you know? And I think the whole thing with the wings and how to overtake and how to maneuver with your lines to not overheat your front tire is like a challenging task. And if you don't do it every weekend, it can be difficult, I could imagine. But like from a riding perspective, he is so incredibly talented, and his only downfall basically were always his injuries. And who knows if it would have been better in 2023 with all the sprint races and like his bad luck at times. So, but like from a riding perspective, I think if he was 10 years younger, he would be competing with Pecco and Bezecchi and Jorge Martin at the front. And like he did, but like for the victory and not for P4. So
Mm.
I definitely think that Danny Pedrosa is one of the most extraordinary talents we ever saw. Like he's the most accomplished rider coming into MotoGP I can remember because he won the 250 championship two
Hmm.
times in the 250, I believe, in his rookie season, and the 125. So he won like three championships in a row. And like the next best thing would be like a Mark Marquez who won the 125 CC championship and then the Moto 2. And of course, Pedro Acosta, if he wins the title. He won in his rookie season in Moto 3 and now is on his way to win the MotoGP title, or like Valentino Rossi, Jorge Lorenzo, two-time 250 champion. I mean, those guys are incredibly talented, and nobody on the current grid except Mark Marquez has this kind of pedigree. So I think Danny Pedrosa would inflict some serious damage, and we can't talk about Danny Pedrosa without the new bike. And we've been raging over the steel frame shitbox for years now because it's so unpredictable, it's so inconsistent, it's such a pick to ride. But in this season, they seem to figure it out. But again, Jack Miller is struggling a lot now.
Mm,
Augusto Fernandez has his ups and downs, and like it was always Brad Binder's bike.
yeah.
It was always the case. And even like a rider like Miguel Oliveira couldn't figure it out at times. So very, very difficult bike, and it seems like it works for Brad Binder now. Very, very, at a very good level, and there's still something missing. But like Jack Miller is taking a shit at the back of the grid, getting wiped out by Michele Piro, or him wiping out Michele Piro. I didn't see the replay. Did you see the replay?
I didn't actually. I'm not sure who hit into who, but the fact that he's even in that position that's the big concern. The
Yeah,
fact that he's there in the first place.
yeah. Same with Augusto Fernandez. I mean, yes, he's a rookie, but still, he shouldn't be so far down, getting overtaken by Brad Binder after Brad Binder crashed, like
Mm,
on more or less the same bike. That's also a very bad look. And Paul Espargaro just can't stop crashing. So it's a very bad look when you take Danny Pedrosa from this weekend for KTM. So KTM should be very thankful. And the whole point I was trying to make, like the steel frame has been complicated. And now, by the looks of it, they implemented some carbon parts or have like a full carbon chassis. I'm not quite sure. But I will talk with Jack Gorst over the course of the week after the tests are done. Like tomorrow, 9/11, those teams have to really attack the test and
oh fucking hell,
really hit the
Leo.
target there.
Oh god.
But yeah, I will talk with Jack about it, and hopefully he will answer a lot of those questions I have. And if you have some, you can text me on Instagram. You can drop it in the comments. Probably I will do a Q&A again, so I will put something up in my story. But if I don't, it depends a little bit on how busy I am. Then yeah, please reach out to me, and I will ask Jack your questions. But it looks like with the carbon chassis that they or with the carbon frame that they really could make some progress there. And I mean, KTM, they're a very good bunch of people. They know how to do stuff, and Red Bull, they know how to do stuff. And I could definitely see the bike being better, but it should be very unlikely that KTM basically have the first version of this bike to really test it, because it's like the early tests for next year's bike, you know, the Jerez test or the Jerez bike Dani Pedrosa rode was just like a progression of the RC16 they rode at the beginning.
Mm.
And if they just out of the box bring the most competitive bike on the grid, because like I would argue that the KTM Danny Pedrosa rode, if it's the bike, then like with Brad Binder, who's in racing shape, like I already talked about, should be higher than the test rider. Like things are normally in MotoGP with Michele Piro, for example, but Michele Piro is no Dani Pedrosa. So that's like the question. Have KTM just got their version of the F 2004 where it's just perfect and you don't know what to do with it because it's just so good, and you try to look for mistakes, but there are none because it's so good? Or is Dani Pedrosa just such an incredible rider? And I'm all here for it to find out. I'm very interested if Pedro will get a ride on the RC16, because I remember Remy Gardner and Rolf Fernandez got their first taste of the RC16 in 2021 at the Misano test.
Hmm.
So I could definitely see KTM allowing him to test the bike, because it will just only benefit his rookie season, I believe.
Well,
So yeah,
hasn't Dennis Anchu been testing a Moto 2 bike?
yeah, on the
So they'll
Pirelli
probably
test.
let Pedro ride an RC16 then.
I don't know if they're allowed to. That's a whole different ballgame. So who
Hmm.
knows? But yeah, it will definitely be interesting.
Yeah.
But if KTM really hit it out of the ballpark with this bike, then we are in for a treat next season, because now it looks like KTM is still one step behind Ducati and Pecco. But if they're like on a level, it should be interesting. And if they can bring this consistency Brad Binder has at the moment. So yeah, very very exciting days with the test coming up tomorrow. So I am very very excited to talk with Jack about it. And yeah, I would like to know the answer of the question, but I think like realistically, it's a combination of both. The KTM is very good, but also Danny Pedrosa is very good. So I think it will be a combination of those two factors.
Well, let me put it this way: HRC's top executives must lie awake at night wondering why they let Danny Pedrosa go to KTM. And I think the reason they left is, or the reason they let him leave, is kind of the reason why Danny Pedrosa never got the credit he deserved. I think he's been overshadowed his entire career, and unfairly so. I mean, when Danny Pedrosa rode, okay, fans appreciated him, and they did they did give him the credit he deserved. But I don't think Danny Pedrosa's talent was ever as fully appreciated as it should have been, because he was overshadowed by the Alien era, by Jorge Lorenzo, Valentino Rossi, Marc Marquez, Casey Stoner, and Danny Pedrosa was always kind of the other alien. He was never really one of the main pack of aliens when he should have been. And then when you think about Danny Pedrosa's time at Honda with Marc Marquez, this kind of comes back to Honda's arrogance and lack of foresight. You know, Honda thought that the good times would never end with Mark, and they thought that, you know, okay, this bike's a piece of shit, but we have Mark Marquez, and Mark will always be able to make this bike work. Okay, Danny, you can leave. We don't need you. We have Mark. It's been great, but goodbye. And then it's kind of a bit like the Great Depression and every other great disaster that's ever happened in history. Honda never saw it coming. The disaster comes, and now they look like assholes in hindsight, basically. And what KTM have done is take advantage of one of the greatest riders in modern MotoGP history, his high IQ and appreciation for the sport, and his development ability to build that bike into what it's become. And when it comes to KTM, you know, Danny Pedrosa is at least 60 to 70% responsible for why they're as good as they are now. Don't get me wrong, you have great riders like Brad Binder, who's just a hard worker and who can make the best of what he has. But when you have someone like Danny Pedrosa who can give you 80, 90, 100 laps at every test, and he has the IQ to say, okay, the frame's wrong, the tires are wrong, the exhaust is wrong. When you have somebody who thinks like an engineer and thinks like a mechanic, but has the talent of a rider, you can't put a price on that insight and that information. And Danny Pedrosa is that intelligent that he can go to his engineers and know more about the bike than they do. And that's why he was so good this weekend, because that bike is his bike. Nobody has spent the time on that KTM that Danny Pedrosa has spent. He knows every single intricacy of that bike. He knows it on a level that nobody else does. And that's why it's so good, because it's Danny Pedrosa's insight. And with Danny Pedrosa, I mean, like you said, you made a great point about the bike. If he develops that bike into something that can be even better next year, then Ducati could have a real challenger on their hands. They genuinely could. Because right now, the difference is Gigi Dall'Igna at Ducati, who is basically a mad NASA scientist who's made that bike into a space rocket. But if Danny Pedrosa and KTM can take that bike to the next level, we're in for a very exciting 2024.
Yes, like the point with Honda. Honda has all the tools to build a great motorcycle, but they stand in their own way.
Mm,
Like, for example, only listening to Mark, or like Yamaha, only listening to Fabio, and just having the arrogance like, no, we know better. And I
yeah,
think KTM is very open to the feedback of Danny Pedrosa, all the riders, and also like bringing in engineers from Red Bull Racing to fix the error. I mean, the bike was completely different last year. Remember, they built like a whole new bike without concessions over the winter, and it has been a success for them, I would say,
yeah.
and or at least for Brad Binder. But the thing with Jack Miller is now we're talking about Jack Miller leaving KTM at the end of the season, and there's speculation. I heard that this is not true, but there was this rumor that KTM offered him double the salary and 10 wildcards to step aside for Pedro. And, like, could you really sack another rookie like Augusto Fernandez? Probably, yes, you could, but it's a bad look for the sport. Pedro wants to be in the factory team. You can't convince me otherwise. So maybe this thing
No
is off the
question.
table because Pedro just wants to be at the factory bike, and it's still weird to me that there haven't been any official announcement yet. It's weird that Paul Espargaro and Augusto Fernandez say, "Hey, I have a seat for next year," and also Jack Miller. But with performances like this, the way we know KTM, we might as well see Jack Miller on the Dakar next year and Pedro taking over his spot at the factory team. Like, it's unfair. I think he deserves a lot more time than half a year because he has his ups and downs, and it's totally natural. But KTM is just KTM, and if you're not Brett Binder, then you're out.
Well, it's both a brilliant and a terrible dilemma to have if you're KTM because, on the one hand, you have arguably the greatest talent since Marc Marquez, a once in a generation talent stepping up to MotoGP. And that's like having diamonds in your hands. Everybody wants to have the next big thing. The problem is who do you get rid of to fit him in? Because Dorna's not giving them a fifth bike. The wild card thing certainly isn't true. That's been confirmed by multiple outlets that was complete bullshit and that never really happened. So now the question is, it's a game of musical chairs where we have two chairs for three riders. Who's going to be the odd man out? You know, Polo Spargaro has had a horrendous injury that he got at the beginning of the season, but he can't stop crashing either. Augusto Fernandez is a rookie who's been getting better and better, but isn't spectacular. And then you have Jack Miller, who's a known hard worker and a real workhorse, but keeps holding people up in the race and can't get the positions back when he gets overtaken. So if you're Pit Byrer and if you're Hervé Poncharal, you've got difficult decisions to make because Pedro Acosta is going up to MotoGP and you cannot let him walk. You have to keep him. That's not even a discussion. The question is who's going to end up with the sad face and who's going to be the odd man out. My money's on Jack Miller, if I'm honest. And it's not because I want to see him go. I love Jack Miller. I've always been a Jack Miller fan. But there's a lot of moving parts to this. And it's like you said, you cannot convince me that Pedro Acosta does not want a factory ride. And if he wants a factory ride, he's going to get a factory ride. And unfortunately, you're not getting rid of Brad Binder. Brad Binder's the best thing that's been part of the KTM project for years. So it's going to have to be Jack Miller that goes, unfortunately. And it's just a real dog shit situation that Jack Miller doesn't deserve to get cut, but you have to cut him because you can't let Pedro Acosta go. So really, you're in that situation, and you know I've heard a lot of rumors about Pedro Acosta being offered the gas seat. I don't think he wants the gas seat. I am convinced he wants the factory seat, and if he wants the factory seat, then Jack Miller's got to go. It's a brutal business, but it is business.
The thing is, there are two things. The first thing is, Pedro and Remy are pretty close friends. They chilled in the summer break together, and
This is true.
Remy has zero positive things to say about Tech 3. Just
Understandably,
listen to the podcast Remy and I did after his MotoGP season. It was
very
like
good
a
listen,
short
by the way.
one. It was a short one, but we just still made it happen. But he has nothing good to say about Tech 3. And if I'm Pedro and I'm having my best friend in the paddock here telling me, hey, don't, then I might as well listen. And the second thing I don't understand, because it could be so simple, like Paul Espargaro had a life threatening injury in
Mm-hmm.
Portimao. This could have gotten bad very, very quickly. Like, he was very lucky. Now, after like half a season, he's back, and he had some ups, he had some downs. He's still a good rider. I don't want to take this away from him, and he's still a good bloke. I mean, I talked to him; he's very, very nice.
Mm.
But when is enough enough? You know, I mean, he has a family. He has two children, I believe, or like one child. I don't care. I mean,
He has children.
yes, he has a wife. He has a family. Let's put it this way. So this dude has a family. He has been in MotoGP for like 10 years now. He
Hmm.
won the world championship in 2013 in Moto 2, and then from 2014 onwards, he was in MotoGP. What do you want more? I mean, do you really want to kill yourself? Do you really want to have another injury like this? I mean, he crashed like 5 times this weekend. When is enough enough? Be like a test rider if you still want to be on a MotoGP bike every now and then. But he's just a hardhead, and my solution to the problem, which with Paul retiring or stepping aside wouldn't be a problem anymore, put Jack Miller into gas alongside Augusto Fernandez, let Pedro have the factory seat, and those two guys, Brad Binder and Pedro, battle for the championship. And Jack Miller is just awesome, like he is at Tech 3, help develop the bike, and I mean, what do you want more? It's so simple, but Paul is such a hardhead, and I don't understand it because this sport is dangerous, and he escaped the crash in Portimao with a very, 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 very lucky that
Very
he
lucky.
didn't kill him. Like Luis Salom died this way, and it's not funny. So I don't understand it. I mean, you had your career, you are a world champion. I know you want to prove that it was Honda's problem and not your problem, but everybody knows Honda's the problem. You don't have to convince us that Honda's the problem. So, I mean, just live your life with your family. I don't
Yeah.
understand. Just don't crash 5 times and end up in a wheelchair whatsoever. I mean, is it really worth it?
It's a very somber point, but a very important point to make, especially for Paul Espargaro. The problem is, and this is the argument Paul Espargaro will make, this is what he loves to do. This is his life. This is his career. This is all he knows how to do. It's all he wants to do. And it's kind of like anybody when they find their passion. Valentino Rossi didn't want to retire because that is his life. Jorge Lorenzo didn't want to have to retire because that was his life. But at some point, eventually, father time catches up to all of us, and eventually, it's a conversation in the mirror that you have to have with yourself. And I think it would be a great scenario, but I don't think Paul Espargaro is willing to let go. I don't know if he's trying to prove it to himself. I don't know if he's trying to stick it to Honda, even though we know he doesn't need to. But I think that would be a good solution all around where you keep Paul Espargaro as part of the KTM family. You put Jack Miller into Gas, and he's much better without pressure as well as Jack. I mean, Jack thrived when he was at Pramac because he didn't have the pressure of the factory team. If you drop him down into Gas, you might actually get a better version of Jack Miller, perhaps. So I think that makes a lot of sense, but the question is whether Paul Espargaro is willing to take the deal or not, because I don't think he is. I don't think he can be talked down from it, and that's kind of what scares me about Paul Espargaro is his hard headedness. You know, like you said, and it's another important point. That is how Louis Salam died, that injury, and Paul Espargaro is remarkably lucky he didn't encounter the same fate as Louis Salam. God rest his soul. And I don't know. I really don't know. But if I had my way and I had my choice, that's the scenario I would go down where Paul Espargaro takes a step back, maybe wild cards occasionally if he wants to. But you let Jack Miller go down to gas, you improve his contract for his trouble. You have Pedro Acosta, Brad Binder, and then you're in a very good position for 2024.
I understand that every motorcycle racer loves motorcycle racing, but the question here is, do you love it more than your family?
Yeah, but Leo, rationale doesn't come into this. You're dealing with irrational people here. You going to pull a Spargo and saying, do you want your family or your career? It's not as simple as that. I mean, if you were dealing with a rational, normal person, of course we know what the choice would be made is. But MotoGP riders are built differently to normal human beings. This is what they are hardwired to do. And trying to talk somebody out of that is, you're never going to win.
The thing is, everybody is in the same danger. I mean, LH is in the same danger.
Yeah, of
Paul is,
course.
and like Dennis Enciu in Moto 3 is in the same danger as those MotoGP guys, more or less. But it's different when you experienced it, you
That is
know?
true.
When you had like a traumatic crash where it could have gone sideways very easily. Like Pecco had a very, very dangerous crash last week. But it's different, you know?
It is different, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And look, as a fan, I'm incredibly grateful that Dianesi and Alpine Stars and AGV and Suomi and Shoei and all these manufacturers have made the sport so much more safer. We're incredibly lucky with the state that we're in that regard, but protective equipment can only do so much. There are certain crashes and certain scenarios where equipment isn't going to protect you. I mean, Valentino Rossi nearly got decapitated a couple of years ago in Austria. Paul Espargaro, I mean, that could have gone so badly. That could have gone so badly wrong if that accident had been 1 inch worse. And I don't know. I really don't know. I hope he's at least willing to consider it because, like you said, and I'm on your side on this, don't think I'm not. There is a point where enough is enough and you don't have to prove anything. I mean, the guy's a world champion. He's done more than any of us will ever do in motorcycle racing. He has won the world championship. He doesn't have anything more to prove. But, like you said, these guys are knuckleheads and they're boneheaded. You can't talk them off the ledge. They're built to ride the ledge and ride the limit. Trying to talk them off that limit is an impossible ask.
Yeah, we had some problems here because the platform crashed. I mean, the internet was working, but
Mm-hmm.
we still could text with each other, but the pic was frozen like Elsa. So yeah, but we're back. And the thing is, with Paul, to finish it off, I can understand everybody's in the same danger, but he's not going to win anyways. Like Paco is about to win a world championship. You couldn't understand him risking it. Aleix, yes, he has children, but he's on there winning races. And Mark Marquez, he is like one good bike away from maybe a ninth title. Could be possible. We don't know. We have to find out. And there are these Grisini rumors. Apparently, he's staying at Honda. That's what like Spanish media is reporting, and that's like what the sponsors want. But at the end of the day, apparently, he has a clause in his contract where he can get out as long as it's not a satellite team where he's signing. And Grisini wouldn't be as long as it's not a factory team where he's signing. Just it has to be a satellite team, and Grisini is a satellite team. So yeah, but Mark Marcus feels different over the last two races. Like there was this period where it felt like he didn't want to be there. He just didn't want to race. He didn't want to risk it. But now it looks like okay, he kind of got his mojo back and really wants to attack again without being reckless. So I think he found a balance there. At
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the season, he was just reckless, but still a couple of positions further up the grid. Then he was like overly careful. And now I think he kind of balanced things out, which is nice to see. And I guess the Honda test tomorrow, or like the Misano test with the new Honda, will be very, very decisive on his future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. Actually, I'm going to give you the funniest rumor that I saw over this past week, and maybe you saw this as well. I saw a rumor from an outlet. I'm not sure which one it was, but there was a rumor that Marquez was going to try and buy the Grassini team. Did you
Yes,
see this?
yeah, I reposted it. I saw this on Everything Motor Racing's Twitter, and then I reposted it. Oh no, on his story, I believe it was like a tweet from somebody, but yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily true. It would be wild. I mean,
It
it
would
would
be
be
funny.
very, very wild. But I don't think Rizzini would sell. That's the thing. Mark would buy, I believe, because he has a shitload of money. But if you're Grizzini, would you really want to sell because you worked so hard to get your independent team back to split from Aprilia? And yeah, I don't see it, to be honest.
No.
But who knows? I mean, everything is possible.
Mm.
And yeah, but it looks like Mark kind of is back in a way.
It does. Very
Which
good
is
point. It actually does. And I have to say, like you said, over the last two, maybe three race weekends, Mark has actually looked a little bit different. He's looked a lot more confident, which is good for the sport. I've always said a good Mark Marquez is good for MotoGP, and that is great to see. My only thing is, and to be fair, this was very smart by Mark. He's still not capable of setting his own qualifying times. He had to get a toe off of Danny Pedrosa to qualify well. Now, I'm not going to criticize him for that because it's Danny Pedrosa. You do what you have to do. But there are going to be races and there are going to be weekends where you have to set your own time. And Mark can't keep towing off of everybody. Eventually, there is going to come a point where you have to set your own time. And that's where Mark's been falling down. It's his qualifying that keeps letting him down, not his heart or his will. But to give him his credit, he was very, very good today in Misano, and he was great in Barcelona too. Um, I think what's interesting as well, and shout out to Jacob from Now Moto News as well for this. He Jacob at Now Moto News posted that I think Stefan Bradl was racing in a full carbon fiber chassis for Honda for next year. I think I saw that, so that's very interesting. It's clear that Honda have listened to all the criticism and they're certainly tired of hearing it. And I'm interested to see what Honda do, because they there did look like there was a lot more sculpted aero on the bike as well. It looked like there was a lot more sculpted carbon aero on the chassis of the bike. So I'm very interested to see what they do this off season. And again, even today, I was reading reports from I think it was Crash MotoGP and maybe Motorsport.net as well, and there's reports that Mark will actually stay with Honda, but he was basically spicing the rumors to Ducati in order to get Honda to work on the bike. Now, I do believe that, and that would make very good sense. But I'm really interested to see what happens because it looks like Honda are at least trying something a little different, which is always good.
Yeah. And if Honda can build a motorcycle, then we are in for a treat next season.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine we have a competitive KTM, we have a competitive Ducati, we have a competitive Marc Marquez. I wouldn't stretch it and say Joan Mir will be competitive and Joan Zarco, but I think Marc on a bike which is a little bit better, it doesn't have to be as good as the Ducati because Marc is so good, then we could be in for a treat. And
Yeah.
imagine if Aprilia is consistent for once, because that one was weird, especially like LA. She was like the worst Ducati, and not Ducati, Aprilia. I'm sorry.
Mm. Yeah, you're right.
It's
It,
weird,
it was weird.
but yeah, Joan Mir just took a shit this weekend.
I mean, Joan Mir, with respect, has been taking a shit all season. It's kind of been a terrible, terrible season for Joan Mir, and he just does not want to be there. It's
Yeah,
so painfully obvious. Joan Mir just wants his Suzuki back. And I don't blame him because the Suzuki was a brilliant bike. But I think if Joan Mir had the option, he would give every penny of his salary to basically ride a Suzuki bike on his own because he wants nothing to do with that Honda. He keeps crashing out. He's miserable as all sin, you can tell, and he just doesn't want to be there. So it's an unfortunate situation for Joan, but like you said, just keeps crapping it every single weekend.
yeah, but he could have bought the Suzuki probably and raced it on his own team alongside Alex Rins. That would have been hilarious.
eBay
But
auction.
yeah, like crowdfunding.
GoFundMe, save the Suzuki team.
Yeah, that would have been
That
nice.
probably
And
would have
I
worked,
think
you know.
I think that with the state of the Yamaha and with the state of the Ducati now, if they didn't develop the bike at all, they still would have been better than Ducati and Yamaha.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's such a kick in the balls when you think about it because it just sucks that badly. But I mean, as far as Joan Mir, his 2024, I don't know what the hell he's going to do because Honda look like they're at least trying something different, but Joan just doesn't want to be there. So I don't know what his situation
Yeah,
is. I've heard rumors about a link to the Grassini seat, but I don't know if that's concrete. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but that's all I've really heard.
yeah, but I can definitely see Joan Mir being better on a new Honda.
Really?
Like the Honda can't get worse.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. It can't get any
Like
worse,
it
I suppose.
can't get any worse. And if the Honda is partially good, then Joan Mir will be better as well. So I think this is just end the season without injuring yourself, and
Mm,
then hopefully next season will be better. But yeah, right now it's just a catastrophe, and he can't stop crashing. That's the thing.
that's the problem more than anything. It's the inability to keep the bike on the track to begin with. Yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see 2024 for Joan Mir because 2023 has been a year to forget for that guy.
And Honda still might get concessions.
That is true. They might well get concessions, them and Yamaha.
Yeah, I've heard that that basically Camilo Espeleta and Dorna is trying to get over the rule that KTM can veto the concession rule. So I'm very excited to see what's going on there. And KTM would be pissed off because it's like a power play between Dorna and KTM at the moment.
Mm.
And KTM wants six bikes. Dorna says no because Dorna would have to financially support a customer team. That's in the contract they have. And then KTM says, okay, you won't get the concessions you want for Honda and Yamaha. It's power
Yeah,
play.
it's a real interesting power struggle at the moment because, like you said, if you're KTM and you're denied two more bikes, but then concessions are given to Honda and Yamaha, you're not going to be happy. I mean, Pit Buyer kind of holds a lot of power in the balance here when you think about it, because on the one hand, they've got their situation with Pedro Acosta, which we've obviously covered earlier in the show. But then on the other hand, Honda and Yamaha, their 2024 kind of hangs in the balance of whether they get concessions or not. And Pit Buyer kind of determines whether they do that or not. Because, like you said, he has that veto power to completely kill that dead. So if I'm Carmelo Ezpeleta, I think a deal has to be struck here where I don't know what you give Pit Buyer. Maybe you give him a fifth bike. I don't know what that is. But you're gonna have to be very careful with how you manage this because they do hold a lot of the cards here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Pete Barra has all four wheels on the ground, and we will see where the direction goes. Now we have a disappointed Pete Barra meme, so that's gonna be fun. So yeah, the weekend definitely delivered. I would like to quickly run through Moto 2 and Moto 3 because dinner's ready. I'm fucking tired and I want to eat and
I
go
don't
to bed.
blame you.
And basically, Celestino Vietti robbed us of a disappointed meme like four times. It's incredible. He channeled his inner Mark Marquez and saved everything.
Yeah.
Pedro was still too good, too fast. Everything was fine. Aaron Canet crashed in a pursuit of another P2, but it is what it is. And Jake Dixon took a shit on the back of the grid again because he got outsmarted by the guy they say is the next Mark Marquez.
That was the best meme, by the way, just really quickly. That Jake Dixon meme when you're outsmarted by the next Mark Marquez, I applaud you, sir. That was very
Yeah,
funny.
I had it with the monster meme, who's just but then they showed the picture from the broadcast, and I thought, yep, this is perfect. And Moto 3, I mean, it's gonna be insane, and David Alonso might have a real shot at the title. How incredible! and Danny Olgado is really taking a dump at the moment. And I mean, it's wild. Dennis Öncü doing wild things. David Alonso doing wild things. Jaume Masia all of a sudden is in the mix again for the championship. So it's wide open. I'm all here for it. And like, imagine a championship battle that goes down to Valencia, where still 4 people can win the world championship and are within like 5 points. What's
Oh, that would be
imagine
amazing.
how incredible, and then put David Munoz into the mix, fighting for his first victory, and then you have Carnage. I mean, you're gonna have dead bodies.
David
it's
Munoz
gonna,
is the new Darren Binder.
it's gonna be crazy. Do
Oh
you know
boy.
what happened between Lukas Tulovic and Isan Guevara? They didn't show a replay.
Yeah, I did see that actually. There was a real battle for the inside line there, and I think Izan Guevara had the inside line, and Lucas Tulovic wouldn't give it up. And I think his front tire hit Izan Guevara's rear tire, and it spun them both off the track. So I'd have to go back and watch it again, but I think it was Tulovic's fault because I think Guevara had the line.
Can you send it to me, please? Because I didn't see it. Probably I was busy making memes or whatsoever, but
Yeah, no problem. If I see it,
I didn't
I'll
see it.
send it to you.
Yeah, maybe there's like a Twitter video you can send me.
By the
They
way,
sometimes,
congratulations to Diogo Moreira. It'll trans Moto 2 next season.
yeah,
Big
yeah.
move.
I'm quite disappointed because I thought he would do better.
Are you ever happy?
No, no, I'm happy with David Alonso. I mean, come on.
I'm happy
This
with
dude
Dennis
is
Antru.
fucking incredible. Yes, I'm very happy with Dennis Öncü. Like the Norwegian flag thing, I saw it in his Instagram bio recently, and then the commentators say that his mom is from there, and it looks like now he's channeling his inner Scandinavian since he's at
Is in
IOS.
her Erling Holland.
Yeah, but yeah, it was just perfect to make the IO meme. But yeah, incredible, and I'm all here for Moto 3 battle. It goes down to the wire. Remember how awesome it was when Pedro and Dennis Foggia was battling as
Yeah.
well. It was crazy. And then Darren Binder, like David Munoz could be the Darren Binder of the 2023 season. It could
Yeah.
be amazing. Imagine David
Oh.
Munoz wiping out Dennis Öncü in the last corner in Valencia and stealing his title as a redemption act for Catalonia.
Oh god. I love Moto 3 on a level people will never understand. It is the greatest show ever created.
Honestly, I didn't want to get up. I was going to sleep for another 5 hours, but holy moly, Moto 3 will get me out of bed every time because
Every
it's
time.
utterly crazy. I'm looking forward to getting up at 4 in the morning for the fucking overseas races where I'm half asleep still, then watching stupid rain delay the whole session for an hour where I could have slept. But Moto 3 is worth it. It's amazing and I'm all here for it. So yeah.
We should
See you.
see for the overseas races. Sorry, just before we end, if people want it, we should live stream watching Moto 3 in the overseas races.
I thought about doing some live streams, but I think it would be utterly boring because I'm not quite yeah, too invested in watching because like I'm watching, making memes, watching, making memes, and then there's a situation where Dennis Öncü just rams David Munoz off and I'm just going crazy. But yeah, as I think it would disturb the meme making process. So yeah, a live stream is not on my radar at the moment. Maybe for like a World
You there,
Superbike
Liam?
race, but yeah, whatever. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you everybody, and I'm heading the fuck out. Goodbye.